Hi, I'm Rachel. Welcome to Half Dozen Homestead.
Okay, so today I'm going to make some okra pickles with the okra that I picked in the garden, and I'm going to probably make some green bean pickles as well because the recipe is very similar. And if I'm already running the canner, I would like to just fill it up and have a full canner load. The more pickles, the better. So for the okra pickles, to prepare the okra, I'm just cutting the stem off of the okra pod. So when I've cut it off the plant, there's about that much stem left. So I just want to cut it as close to the pod as I can while leaving the okra pod intact. So I'm just going to do that with all my okra just to get it prepped for pickling. I'm also going to remove, like on this one, there's all those little hairs. You can leave them, but I just don't really like the texture. Most of them fell off when I washed them, but there's still a few with them on there. Peel the rest of the ground cherries. That's what Calvin and Juliet were doing.
What about this?
What we picked this morning?
Yeah. All these.
What you doing, Nathaniel?
Picking these little berries here.
Do you remember what they're called?
No.
Ground cherries. Taking the husks off the ground cherries for me? Nice. So now I've got my okra prepped, ready to go. I'm going to get my green beans ready. All I'm going to do to get them ready is just pinch off the stem end with each of them, and then they'll be ready to go. Okay, so I've just got my canner preparing the jars here. So I just put them in the canner ahead of time because these are used jars, and I turn them on, let them come to a boil, and that sterilizes the jars. Having sterilized jars, it just helps improve the seal rate, because if there's any bacteria in the jars, it could cause the food to ferment, which will break the seal, and you'll lose all the hard work that you put into your pickles. So I'm going to get my garlic cloves ready for each jar. I'll just crush each clove and then peel them and put one in the bottom of each jar. The recipe actually calls for like half a clove of garlic in each jar, but I don't think I've ever put half a clove of garlic in something in my life because I love garlic, so we're going to do a whole clove. I like to crush the cloves to give it even more garlic flavor into the pickles. Once we have our garlic cloves in, then we'll add our spices. So I follow a recipe for these pickles from the Bernardin home canning book, but I kind of loosely follow the recipe in terms of the spices. But for the brine, you have to actually make sure that the vinegar to water ratio is the right ratio, so that it's acidic enough to be a safe canning recipe. But the spices I kind of do loosely follow the recipe, and then also just do what I like taste-wise. So for my seasonings for the pickles, I have black peppercorns. So those are just for the green bean pickles. I'll do 3 peppercorns in each jar. And then I've got my dill seeds to make them dill pickles. I'll do half a teaspoon in each jar for all of the pickles, okra and the beans. And then these aren't in the recipe, the mustard seeds, but I'm gonna probably do half of the jars with about half a teaspoon of mustard seeds in them because I quite like the taste of them in other pickles that I make, so I'm gonna see how I like them in these. Okay, just to make the brine, I'm just doing equal parts vinegar to water. I'm going to do 6 cups of vinegar and 6 cups of water.
Please, can you pass me my bathing suit?
And I'm just going to add 2/3 cup of pickling or canning salt.
What are you doing?
So you want to make sure you use pickling or canning salt or kosher salt when you're making, when you're canning anything, because it's just free of any impurities that could make your pickles turn dark. On my pot while it comes to a boil, just so I don't lose any brine to evaporation. So I'm gonna pack the beans into the jars as tightly as I can while still being able to get a good amount of pickling brine around the beans. The reason I'm pickling these and not pressure canning them is I just have like such a small amount from this little harvest that I don't have enough to do a big batch. So pickling is easy to do, little bits of everything. Just throw whatever vegetables you have in a jar and add some pickling brine, and then you've got pickles.
I got all the chickens out of the greenhouse and out of the garden, so if we go there and they're back in there, then I know it was a failure. Yeah. Can I sip your coffee? Why not? Can I tell people that you...
Okay, now you can undress.
Rachel can share juice and water, almost anything, as long as it's not a milk product. If it's got milk in it, she can't share it. It's because when you were a kid, something happened, right?
Yeah, the little kid in kindergarten took my milk glass and took a sip out of it, and then was mad at her, so she said, "Oh, it's okay, I'll fix it." And then she poured some of her milk into my milk cup, and it was all just a mess of just everyone's milk in the jar, the cups.
It's a very traumatic experience for her. So, coffee's got cream in it. Coffee's a non-share unless she's finished.
These guys I'm going to leave out because they're they got a bit too big on the vine. So I'll just bring those back out to the barn and feed them to the pigs and turn green beans into bacon. And now I'm going to add the okra to the jars. The recipe actually calls for half of a hot red pepper in each jar. So I might do that. I haven't decided. See how many of these little guys I can fit in there. You want to make sure with pickles to leave about a ½ inch headspace at the top. Just probably about that. So I've got 4 jars filled with okra, 2 with green beans, and a few little okra pods left over. So I think what I'm going to do is find some other vegetables that I harvested this morning and fill the rest of the jars. And I've got some little cucumbers that I picked this morning, so I'm just going to remove the stem end and the blossom end. They say that removing the blossom end makes it less likely for the pickles to turn soft because there is a enzyme in the blossom end that can do that. And I also remove the stem end because I find that sometimes my garden pickles, if they are bitter at all, which they sometimes can be, it's usually just on the stem end of the cucumber, and if I slice that off, it really helps with the flavor. Some hot peppers. So with my banana peppers, I like to remove the seed out of them. Not that I mind it, but I just find I have trouble digesting the hot pepper seeds. So I did buy a pepper seed quarter. Fits right inside the pepper, and it's just really easy. Got my hot pickling brine, so I'm just going to fill each jar with brine up to the ½ inch. Leave a ½ inch of headspace at the top. I'm just going to use a wooden chopstick. You don't want to use metal because it could crack or dent the jars. I'm just putting it down in there, moving it around a little bit. It just helps to get any air bubbles that are in there up to the top. And then once you've done that, you can adjust the amount of brine because you do still want that ½ inch headspace. Okra are like full of air, so they kind of start to float a bit when you add the water, but that's okay. Just top them up. Once the jars are filled, you just want to take a clean cloth and just wipe around the edge, make sure there's not any debris. It also gives you a chance to feel the rim of your jar, because if there's any little cracks or dents in the rim of your jar, the lid won't seal. Or if there's any food debris on there either. Just do that. New lid. And place a lid on top of each jar. Then we'll just put a band on and just fingertip tight. first started canning, the recommendation was to heat your lids before you put them on your jars, but they actually don't recommend that anymore, and it's fine to use them fresh out of the box. The rings, I always make sure they're clean. I washed these before I started. So they're all ready to go. And I'm going to pop them in my canner that's hot and ready to go. So the reason I'm adding these to hot jars, or to a hot canner, is because the jars are hot, because I put hot bromine into them. You always want your jar temperature to match your canner temperature. So if you were canning something that that the jars were cold, you want to start them in a cold canner before you bring them up to boil. The reason for that is the shock and the change in temperature could crack your jar. And I have learned that the hard way before, and then you lose all your argument. I've got my jars in there. I'm just going to add a bit of hot water, because you want at least an inch of water covering the lid of your jars. So I always have a kettle of boiling water going, just in case I need to do that, so I don't have to like add cold water to my canner and then wait for the whole pot to heat up again, because that just makes it take even longer. So then I put the lid on the canner and I have it set to boil. Once that comes to a boil, then I'll let it process for the correct processing time, which I believe is 15 minutes. So I'll do that and then I'll turn the canner off. Okay, so the jars are ready to come out of the canner. We'll just carefully take them out. And I'm just going to put them on this tea towel. I don't want to put them directly on the counter because, well, A, because they're hot. I don't want to wreck my counter. But also because the coolness of the counter could shock the jars. So I just want it to be like a really gradual cool down. I've got 9 jars of assorted pickles that we'll enjoy this winter. And they look so pretty in the jars. We've got beans, hot peppers, cucumbers, and the okra. And the okra always float a little bit because of all the air that's in the pods, but that's fine. It'll still taste great.
Thanks for watching Half Dozen Homestead.